Hello world, welcome back to Razor RC. Got a nice little tuning video on the Team Corally Dementor. This is the V2 2021 edition, and I just want to cover the changes I made, kind of the tuning things I did to get it to drive a little bit better, and then hopefully this helps you out if you've got one of these or really any of the other Team Corally 1/8 scale 6S vehicles. Want to give a big shout out to Euro RC for sponsoring this line of videos. We get a 5% off coupon code. It applies to everything on the site, so whether you're interested in Team Corally or Arma or X-Ray or Team Associated, they carry pretty much everything. You get a 5% off coupon code. Definitely a good way to save some money. So I've had this for about a month now, and I just want to cover the changes I made. There are really some minor little tuning things you can do to the vehicle to, I think, get it to drive a little bit better. So I want to cover that. First off, shocks definitely need some improvement. The stock shock package is really way too soft. I'm actually running 800 CST in the front. That's approximately like 60-65 weight oil depending on which brand you get, but 800 CST seems to work pretty well. And then I'm also running Kraton springs up front, so these are from the Arma Kraton line of vehicles. I think all the 1/8 scale 6S springs are pretty much the same, so whether you want that or an Outcast springs or whatever, but they are pretty good fitment, and then also pretty much seems to be about the right amount of force as well, so the spring tension stuff seems pretty good. In the rear, actually, there is not enough droop on this vehicle, and what I mean by that is that out of the box, the rear shocks are actually the same as the Python or Radix shocks, and the axles don't extend below the chassis. They're actually like way up high, like up here somewhere, so you just don't get enough suspension travel. So I grabbed some shocks off an Arma Kraton EXB or a V5. Pretty much you want the latest shocks. If you get a V4 or earlier, the shocks are actually even shorter, so definitely get EXB or V5 shocks. They should fit pretty well. I assume they're the same on the Notorious and the Outcast as well, but you would not want like Typhon shocks or anything like that, because they would be a little bit shorter. So that gives you the right amount of travel. I did try the stock shocks with Kraton springs, and that was better than the stock springs. The stock springs are way too soft for this vehicle. It just chassis slaps really hard. So at least get the springs from a Kraton, but really the right fix is to get the Kraton EXB or V5 shocks all together. These are pretty inexpensive. I think roughly $25-30 on eBay in the United States, so not particularly expensive to get a nice little upgrade. That helps tremendously. I left the shock oils stock. That's about, I think it's 1000 CST as per Arma, but that seems pretty good. So I am currently running 1000 CST in the rear and then 800 in the front. Springs are excellent though, so definitely make at least that change. Other changes I made, there is another issue I found, which is that the ESC tray here in the back, it's really held on only by like 2 screws here in the front. So you got this battery tray, and then you can see those 2 screws right next to the ESC, and that holds on the ESC tray, but it was like flopping around quite a bit in the back here. There's really nothing holding on the rest of that tray, so I found it a little weird. So what I ended up doing was actually adding an additional countersunk flathead screw right there. So there's actually a little bit of a post underneath that ESC tray that, as long as you line it up correctly, you can actually mount it, have that screw threaded into that post, and just keeps that ESC tray nice and locked in, because I found it was flopping around a lot. And then the problem with that was it was actually kind of cutting into my ESC wire. So you can see here in the back, I actually have a little connector, because it pretty much just wore through that little wire there in the back. I think it was kind of pinching that wire, and then it just pretty much killed it, and my ESC kind of died. So I am now rerouting the wire underneath here from the side, and then going through the battery tray underneath all the way to the receiver box here. So that was another fix I made. I do recommend adding that countersunk screw there. That'll just kind of help it stay in place. Another change I made was the drag link here. So the stock drag link is a little bit too long. I do recommend shortening it. I'm running 13.66 millimeters from shock rod end or rod end to rod end. So around there, 13.6, 13.7 is probably about correct. If that thing is too long, you actually don't get equal travel left and right. And unfortunately with the stock radio, there's really just dual rate adjustment. They do have endpoint adjustment, but it doesn't have enough travel, so you end up just using the dual rate adjustment. And with that longer drag link, you know, one side will end up having more steering than the other, and so it won't be even. I can't remember if it's the left or the right side, but yeah, run 13.65 millimeters. I think you'll find it really like super close left and right. I'm actually running a different radio, and I find my endpoints like almost perfectly symmetrical, something like 70, 71, something like that. So that does help quite a bit. Another update I did was actually running the carbon fiber inserts in the rear brace there. Unfortunately on the Dementor, and I think also on the Python or Radix, there's just not enough bracing here in the back end, and the rear end kind of like compresses a little bit too easily. And so then this basically this rear drive shafts ends up bending really easily, even on like fairly clean landings. You know, if you just land kind of on the rear end, the rear tires like that, it can kind of bend that chassis and ends up bending that dog bone, and then you have to either buy a new one or strainer or something like that. I also did shim my center differential to the front a little bit, so there's a little shim right there in the center diff. I put that in the back so it kind of shims the diff forward just a hair to just give you a little more play there in the back, give you a little more extra room for that chassis to compress. And then the last change I made was basically tuning the differential. So I left the center diff the same. It's about right. I think it's 100K stock out of the box. Front, I believe, as per the manual, it's 20K front and 10K rear. I actually end up moving the front diff to the rear, which it says is 20K, but feeling it, it still feels like closer to 10K. I don't know if it's actually 20K or 10K, but you know, whatever they got in there feels about right. And then I took the rear diff, stuck it in the front, and refilled it with what I know is 20K for sure. So I refilled it with 20K, so I'm theoretically running 20K of my own and 20K factory in the rear, but the 20K factory feels more like 10K, but that's really close anyways as what you would want. So 20K, 100K, 20K, and those differential fluids feel pretty nice. So that's pretty much it for the Team Corally Dementor. Big shout out to your RC. We got that 5% off coupon code that does support the channel. If you click on that and check it out. And anyways, yeah, that's pretty much it. Definitely hit the like, share, and subscribe buttons. Look for more videos soon. Thanks for watching.